I'm your moderator for today. So my name is Hans-Christian Hoppe, and I happen to work for Scapos, who have a leading role in Fortissimo 4. So the meeting today, or the webinar today, is organized by the Fortissimo 4EuroHPC project, and it will give you a good overview about, the scope of Fortissimo 4, some success stories, opportunities to actually submit proposals for funding, and of course about the motivation and the rationale behind the project. So just to sum up what Fortissimo 4 does in one sentence, it helps industrial novices to HPC, preferably SMEs, to actually leverage HPC, data analytics, and AI technology for their business benefit. And then, we would like to phrase it in the way that this paves the evolution towards Industry 4.0. So this webinar here will be recorded, and you see the red recording flag. The screen shared will be part of the recording, and the audio, of course. Your name, so anything in the chat, will not be part of the recording, so you do not need to worry about that. Operationally, we'd like to mute everybody except the speaker during the various presentations. If you have questions, and you're very welcome to ask any question that you might have, please put them in the chat, and we will, after each presentation, look at the chat and then call out the questions, and see what the take of the presenters is. That's basically it. Each presenter can show their own slides. If that should not work, Tina has a backup copy and can actually jump in. So the agenda, you see, we are covering between 9 and 11:10, maybe a little bit later, depends a bit on the discussion that we have. We have 6 presentations that cover everything from, the objectives and, the early success stories of the Fortissimo range of projects. You'll hear about ITEC in Ireland, about the SME accelerator. You will hear from Cycus about best practices for HPC and smart data. And there is a nice success story from a previous Fortissimo project. And last but not least, you will learn about the upcoming or the already open call to of Fortissimo 4, which targets again SMEs in industrial use cases. So having said that, we jump into the agenda. First presentation is by Dr. Bastian Koller, High Performance Computing Center Stuttgart, and he will actually talk about how to actually strengthen the competences and the competitiveness actually of industry by EuroHPC. Thank you.
So first of all, obviously, there's a welcome from the coordinator part, where I'm obviously the coordinator, so I welcome you all to this webinar. Happy to see many unknown faces here, because it means that the interest is really, let's say, getting bigger and bigger. So for those who don't know me, I'm Bastian Koller. I'm the managing director of the High Performance Computing Center Stuttgart, and I have the honor to lead this project activity together with a very well experienced staff from the other Fortissimo projects. So this enabled us to really have a quick start here. And just starting out, just giving you some hints here. Obviously, HPC in business is getting more common, and we have to be clear here. It's not only HPC, or we normally talk about HPC plus, which is HPC, HPDA, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, etc. We see that this is taken more and more up by industry. However, it's always quite of a hurdle to overcome to really make use of it anytime, especially if you're a small and medium enterprise. The investments that you would have to do to explore the potential of this is, let's say, quite a high investment and that risky. So the idea was that was in Fortissimo, the original and the following projects now at the current state, the Fortissimo 4EuroHPC project, that really support industry on their path to utilize. Good. So this slide is a bit about the benefits of HPC. Many times people ask themselves, okay, that's nice technology, why should I use it? And you see that there's a quite variety of advantages in here. I think Andreas Virza will tell you later more about this. So this talk here now is rather an appetizer for the things to come and to raise a lot of expectations which the other people have to fulfill. So this is quite fine. So as I said, the mission here is simply we continue what has been started with Fortissimo 1 and Fortissimo 2. It's something which is not new. There's a well-defined process behind that. And the idea is really to work with open calls to enable partners, or let's say SMEs especially, to bid for experiments, funded experiments, which then should end up, or let's say lead to success stories, which again manifest the potential of the technologies for industry. And one thing is, which we also have here, is the support and collaboration with the national competence centers. And this is something where I will give you some insights now, because this is some add-on on a national level to work with industry, which hasn't been there before, but which is very helpful in terms of multiplication and support of the activities. So if you look at the European HPC strategy, you see the three main pillars, which are infrastructure, technologies, and applications. And baseline for everything of this is competences. So in the infrastructure area, we will have soon in Europe, we have already some of the 5 petascale systems which were acquired by the joint undertaking. There will be at the end 3 pre-exascale systems. I know that exascale systems will come soon. We have Praise, we have Shaw, and there are many things ongoing here to provide best fitting infrastructures. Then we have technologies, where we have the technologies being developed for the European needs. I hear somebody very loud typing. Okay, we'll try to continue. So we have the EPI, the European Process Initiative, which is developing technologies here. We have FF4EuroHPC as a platform in the technologies area, and obviously people work on applications. But as I said, again, the only thing where it's all bases on is really the competences which should be available. And if we look at the distribution of this, we have European infrastructures, we have European research, we have European centers of excellence, we have European technology platforms, we have European strategic activities, we have other European activities. Fortissimo is a European activity, and we have also on a national level, national infrastructures, etc. And there's quite a diversity and maturity of the activities, simply because on a national level, this was always depending on a national strategy. And some nations have an industrial strategy, some don't have yet that, let's say, well elaborated national strategy because of simply a focus on different things. And this is something which should be closed to ensure that, and we call this the level glue, to ensure that the knowledge gained on European level and the knowledge gained in other nations can be supportive for industries in all over Europe and all over, let's say, European countries, associated countries, etc., so that these industries there can also start benefiting from the utilization of HPC and the associated technologies. So at the end, the National Competence Center is a single reference point, or should be a single reference point, which should catalog, increase national HPC competences, and all competences around HPDA, AI, etc. And there should be services supportive and really tailored to the needs of different groups of stakeholders. And one of them is industry, still obviously academia and public administration is in here. We already see also that the industry part is currently starting to split into, let's say, large industry and SMEs, because we see that the services should be different in that area. And this is starting to evolve now. So a structure of such an NCC, National Competence Center, and there's, let's say, there should be one now manifesting in every country, because the activity is ongoing. What you see here isn't, I marked this with the red lines. this is where the industry could be involved in here. On one side, as a provider of something, benefiting on providing services on base of HPC, or using HPC for their services, using activities in here, and also, let's say, being simply an end user of something. So there's quite a plethora of things which is possible. And yeah, this is the mission. The project started in September 2020. Will run for 2 years for now in a phase 1, and you see there's quite a huge coverage of Europe plus associated countries, and this is continuously set up. There's another activity which is called Castella. We'll just quickly go in here because this is the one which ensures the exchange on the European level. So that means that we did not only support or focus on the national level in terms of, okay, we set up in each country a national competence center, but the idea is really to explore these possibilities of synergies. And therefore, Castella provides this activity to coordinate and support the centers, to act with working groups in here. So there's a working group on industry, there's a working group on training, twinning, mentoring, and etc. And where really these 33 NCCs can exchange best practices, also with a particular focus in industrial interaction, and by that they can learn from each other. And we see and hope that this will continue, really, let's say, boosting the capabilities of a nation or national competence center to interact with the local industry, from large industry to SMEs, to a maximum here. And obviously there's a close interaction with Fortissimo for EuroHPC now, because we use this as a multiplier to really spread the news about the open calls, and there should be support and will be support for the open calls by also organizing webinars in the nations, by also, let's say, supporting the knowledge transfer so that the NCCs can support industrial players in writing bids for the open call, etc. So Guy will tell you more later about the open call. So we'll not go too much into depth here. And if you look in the context, and let's say just to see this here, you see there's a plethora of things on a European level. The exascale developments, we have the ETP for HPC, we have the centers of excellence, which are represented by a CSA, etc. And Fortissimo for EuroHPC is one part in here. And by this bridge that we enabled here between Castella and EuroCC, we can now, let's say, much better support also the national level NCCs. And with successful experiments on Fortissimo for EuroHPC, obviously also there will be success stories coming out for the NCCs themselves. So just to let's say summarize the things, and then I leave the floor for the other people or discussions if there are questions. There are obviously a lot of activities here ongoing. Being bluntly honest, if you talk to some SME with no experience, then simply they will not be aware of anything really going on either on national level or European level, unless they are involved in that. So the important part here is to fill really the gap of this knowledge transfer and to give them a place where they could start understanding this. We see that the competences, and this is something which we know from Fortissimo for EuroHPC, which we know from those countries which are working with industry heavily, it's not only about terms of technology. So it's nice if you know how to perfectly optimize a CFD application for manufacturing as SME, but you also need to understand what they really need, how do you interact with them, etc. And then we have, let's say, the big flagships, EuroCC and Castella, which explore the synergies, as I said before, and Fortissimo for EuroHPC to boost really to explore the further potentials for the use of HPC and the associated technologies by industry. And this is getting something which is much more manifesting now, and where we see how the things get together, where we, again, we still learn by doing, but we have a much better and profound base now to continue working on this. And thus, I hope that we will see also coming from these webinars a lot of applications for the open call, and to see really how we can strengthen Europe further. And this is the last slide, the classical thank you slide, which is quite overcrowded if you name all or if you put in all the acknowledgements from the projects. So thanks a lot. I tried to be as quick as possible. Sorry for the bad connection at the beginning. I hope it was better now. Again, blame Vodafone for this, not me. They just want more money and give me less quality of service. That's perfect. And then I shut up, or at least look at the questions table if there's some questions.
Okay, thank you, Bastian. So let's look at the chat. So any questions for the presenter? Yeah, I have one question, Bastian, if I may. So you've shown Castella as kind of a key position, between the national organizations, exemplified by the NCCs, and then the various European EuroHPC, EuroHPC JU controlled activities. So how are you getting along with actually connecting these different entities?
Yeah, so just go back to the slide with this nice picture, and this picture is something we started drawing some I think 1 year ago, and this is still evolving. So let's say the Castella EuroCC interaction is quite easy because it's let's say you can see this as one big activity, and there's a natural when defining the Castella and EuroCC interaction, there was a natural bridge between both of them. EuroCC themselves has the NCCs, and the NCCs on the national level are, let's say, now working with the national stakeholders of all the competences. So it's not that in each national competence center, which is currently realized as a work package in the project, we don't have all the stakeholders as a beneficiary of the project, but there's a key team which was at the time when defining the activity nominated by the government, which takes care to onboard and to interact with the national stakeholders to get them on board. So this is one part. The other part is the European level part, and obviously here is also, by the way, this is a similar thing also on the national level. There is no, let's say, dictatorship of Castella now to tell people what to do. It's a simple thing that we started in Castella with first interactions with activities like Focus COE, which is the CSA for the Centers of Excellence. We started interacting with PRAISE, obviously. We started interacting with the EPI consortium now. We start interacting with diverse other activities, and this is like we're opening to these activities to represent themselves also, and to see what we could do together. And it can be simple, let's say, like webinars, providing the information about them, but it could be also that we start looking for more focused into how could the NCCs interact, for instance, with a Center of Excellence, or do they have somebody in here? At the end, the ideal place, or the ideal way of working would be that somebody can go to Castella, and Castella can do some brokerage in case the somebody from a national level doesn't know whom to talk to, and then they are sent out like satellite activities. So it's not that everything has to happen then under the umbrella of Castella, but it's really like a broker here.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, then I think we should continue with the next presentation. Actually, the presenter now is Samir Ben Shabane, and I hope I pronounced this reasonably correctly, from Telegnostics in Paris. And the next presentation now is about the business development and exploitation support of the experiment results in Fortissimo 4. So Samir, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Hans Christian. So good morning, everybody. My name is Samir Ben Shaban. I'm a senior project manager at ITEC. ITEC is a French association for the promotion of HPC and digital innovations. ITEC is in charge of the exploitation and business development aspects for FF4EuroHPC project. I will start my presentation by the objectives of the work package 4 and its 2 tasks, which are the exploitation and the business development tasks. Then I will introduce the methodology we can adopt to reach these objectives, starting by our interaction with the NCCs and the digital innovation hubs, the questionnaire we set up, the extraction of key exploitable results for the experiment, and eventually the lean canvases and all this to help the best exploitation of the experiment results for the partners and for the project itself, and of the business development of the partners involved in the experiments by the adoption of HPC. In addition to the technical and managerial support which will be provided by the work package 2, FF4EuroHPC will provide business development and exploitation support through the work package 4. Actually, WP4 has two main objectives. The first one is, in general, to support the business development of FF4EuroHPC activities by helping the relevant digital innovation hubs and industry associations to express their interest in the FF4EuroHPC approach and involve them in the promotion of our ecosystem by defining with the ISVs how they can reference the experiments in which they are involved, by assisting the national HPC competence centers to collaborate effectively with the SMEs involved in the program. The second objective is to sustain the experiments participants, in particular the SMEs, to maximize their innovation potential arising from experiment outcomes and help them to communicate on it. The whole aim is to ensure the maximum output for the overall FF4EuroHPC activities and help experiment participants to develop their business. About exploitation, WP4 is divided into tasks. The first task is exploitation, which aims to enable the best use of the experiment results. We will essentially collect and analyze the needs of the SMEs in terms of business development, extract the real outputs of the experiments and help disseminate them, for example, by the extraction of exploitable results for each of the experiments and by helping the participants to market their innovations, for example, by preparation of lean canvases and to prepare sort of business plan. Sorry. Then we can also establish collaboration. We may establish collaboration with NCC's digital innovation hubs and industrial association for better exploitation of the experiment outputs. The second objective or the second task have the objective to provide business development support to the SMEs. We plan to monitor and adapt the business development SMEs needs, investigate in collaboration with the national competence centers the way they will support the innovation of their SMEs participating in the FF4EuroHPC program. We will collect the SMEs development priorities and check the degree of implementation of the planned development and actions in collaboration with the national competence centers. We also define with the technological suppliers like ISVs and services providers the way they will reference the experiment. About our methodology, we have defined the methodology allowing to reach the targeted objectives. So the first one is a close interaction with the and collaboration with the digital innovation hubs and NCCs. FF4EuroHPC is considered as the key tool to foster partnership between the SMEs and their national HPC competence centers by exploring business experiments which go beyond the funded activities. This can be done by the investigation and collaboration with the NCCs, the way they will support the innovation of their SMEs participating in the FF4EuroHPC programs. Studying and defining the way in which the experiments will be referenced by the relevant technological suppliers, collecting the SMEs development priorities and check the degrees of implementation of the planned development and action in collaboration with the NCCs, produce and disseminate success stories extracted from the experiment, raise the awareness of the NCCs and digital innovation hubs to the importance to support SMEs wishing to invest in HPC. We can also support the SMEs involved in the project to best exploitation of the experiment outcomes. The SSCs can also help the participants to identify new business challenges, new collaborations, and new partners. They can also assist the SME to develop business based on exploitable results issued from the experiments, and they can support the implementation of the decided actions to foster the use of HPC by SMEs. The final result can only be a maximization of the impact of FF4EuroHPC on the European industry. We prepare some tools to ensure the success of our actions. One of the tools we will use is a questionnaire, which will allow to identify, among others, the numerical simulation use of the SMEs involved in the experiment, their current and future projects in HPC, their needs in terms of HPC, and their needs in terms of business development. All the SMEs involved in the experiments will be asked to answer the questionnaire, and this will help to set up the process for best exploitation of the experiment's results and to support the involved partners to develop their business. Another tool we set up is key exploitable results. We put on place this tool to identify the real exploitation results issued from the experiments by sort of key exploitable results tables. So for each experiment, we will produce key exploitable results draft containing sections with clear characterization, with a full description of the exploitable result, with key describing also key innovative aspects of the result and market opportunities. We will describe also, we will identify also partner contribution of the partners to the specific result. We will identify the exploitation for and the steps for the exploitation of the result, its commercialization, its development, its licensing, etc. We will identify IPR aspects by identifying the possible claims of different partners related to the IP of the result. We will identify how the partners plan to collaborate in the exploitation of the result. And finally, we will identify the risk management. We will manage the risk and identify the critical risk factors related to the exploitation of the result, preventing its full exploitation. And we will indicate the planned action for the mitigation of these risks. These can just have to be validated with the involved partners. So we need the full involvement of the experiment partners in this operation. Another tool we may use is the lean canvas. So the care step or the key exploitable result step can be followed by a lean canvas step in order to better market the products or development outcome of the experiment. The lean canvas is a sample table with several sections and is generally used for innovative products produced by small entities like startups, etc. This will allow to identify and present in a simple way the solved problems, the alternative solutions, the existing alternative solutions, or how other stakeholders solve these problems, the metrics to measure the efficiency of the proposed solutions, the solution proposed by the consortium, the unique value proposition of the result, the customer segment, and the financial aspects like cost structure and revenue streams. All this will help to set up the actions to support the business development of the outcome or the results of the experiments. I think my presentation is terminated. If you have any questions. So thank you for your attention. If you have any question, I am here to answer these questions.
Yeah, thank you, Samir. So everybody dialed in. So if you have questions, well, type them in or feel free in the next few minutes to speak up. So I think one of the, well, it's not a question that I have, it's just maybe a bit of a clarification. So in the Fortissimo 4 projects, the experiments, the first set of experiments, well, has started actually in June. So they are at the very early stage. And consequently, Samir's work in the work package 4 is also at a very early stage. So that is, there will be results and there will be much more data becoming available as the experiments progress.
Yes,
right,
true.
Samir?
Yes, the results will evolve with the experiments. So we at the beginning we extract results from the proposals, and we will update these results according to the developments of the experiments.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So last call for questions then. If not, we are exactly back on schedule. And the next presentation is from Dr. Venkatesh Kannan. Actually, he is from ITEC, which is the Irish well, High Performance Center, and I think they're also the NCC of Ireland. And this is on the SME accelerator. So, Venkatesh, the floor is yours. Yes, and the slides are up. Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and hello everyone, good morning. Thanks for the introduction. My name is Venkatesh Kannan, Technical Manager at ITEC, as pointed out. So, ITEC, as it was mentioned, is the National Center for High Performance Computing and Related Technologies in Ireland, and we're also the National Competence Center under EuroHPC in Ireland. We are fundamented primarily by the Irish government, and legally we are hosted by the National University of Ireland at Galway, so we participate as an RTO and as an RPO in national and European programs. Our focus is on providing computation and data-driven technologies and platforms for operations services in Ireland, primarily to the academic and research sector, but also engage in R&D and co-development and skills development activities. We engage with academia primarily, but we also work closely with industry and public sector partners on problems. So just a quick end-to-end presentation of the capabilities of an ITEC. Well, as mentioned, computer and data management platforms and services is one of our primary mandates. As a part of this, we operate the national HPC infrastructure, but also a number of data management platforms, particularly around environment, climate, and satellite data at national Euro and European levels. And over the last 2-3 years, we have also engaged or gotten on board the pilot quantum computing environments as a part of the national service and at the European level in the upcoming hybrid HPC quantum computing and simulation systems. Our primary focus then, based on that, is the performance engineering of the workloads and applications, from numerical simulations to machine learning, data analytics technologies on these kind of systems, but also on the portability of workflows from cluster-based to a more cloud computing, commercial cloud computing based environment. And naturally, quantum computing, our primary focus is on the hybridization of HPC and quantum computing systems at just an infrastructure level, but a system, software, and applications level as well, across different algorithms and application areas. And naturally, based on all of that, high performance data analytics and enabling machine learning and deep learning workflows on HPC is one of our key areas of work, and we consider HPC as edge to compute. So just along the lines of the digital continuum, quite well illustrated in the ETP for HPC. So it's from edge to cluster or cloud that we address HPC. And a significant part of our activities is also transferring this knowledge. So knowledge transfer and skills development across a wide range of target audiences that who have not started the digital transitions journey, but also on the performance engineering. So it's the entire spectrum of technology briefings to create awareness, workshops for hands-on, and more elaborate engagement in academically supported skills development program. In-house, we have the benefit of one domain where we have experts working with us, particularly in environmental sciences and climate informatics. I'll come to why this is relevant in a later slide, because we are engaged in optimization of climate models, weather forecasting models, use of climate data sets, environmental related data sets, remote sensing data sets, and so on, for things like digital twins or model coupling data assimilation across the industry and academic sectors in Ireland. So being the National Competence Center in EuroCC, our focus is both on the academic as well as the enterprise sectors. So for this, to enable this, we have two programs as a part of EuroCC. The academic flagship program is primarily focused on researchers and scientists in the higher education institutes in Ireland, and to build their or increase their competitiveness in leveraging both the national system, but more importantly, larger scale European systems, Tier 0 or EuroHPC systems that are coming up. So this is a 2-year support program that we kickstarted in September when EuroCC started last year. And it focuses on working closely with the PIs and researchers at the universities to support performance optimization and scaling up of their application codes. So currently, the first year is focused on scaling it up as much as possible on the national systems. We do have a couple of projects that are running on Tier 0 systems already, but then the objective is by the end of the second year, finish of the current EuroCC program, the PIs will be in a position where they have started scaling up their codes on the Tier 0 systems, and they would apply for access to the EuroHPC systems as they come online. Increasingly, the application domains, as I mentioned, are quite varied. They are from quantum physics and information processing to astrophysics, astronomical simulations, but also more fundamental machine learning, like privacy preservation, models for recommender systems, and their applications to material discovery, for example, machine learning aided material discovery. That's the academic side. The enterprise side is enabled through the SME Accelerator program, which is the focus of our presentation today. And this is primarily to support startups and SMEs in Ireland for their adoption of digital transformation, particularly focusing around HPC, AI, and data analytics. And this is not just for taking some of their solutions and accelerating them or scaling them up, but it's more in the wider spectrum that we have been discussing, that it depends on the maturity of the SME or startup that they might need introduction to what this concept is and its benefits. But also we have SMEs that have in-house teams of machine learning data scientists, performance engineers, but they need more additional expertise, in-depth expertise in scaling up performance optimization depending on their deployment environment. So it's a wide range of spectrum that we have to address when in the SME Accelerator program. And this is often done in our current projects with the SMEs through co-location or blended teams between ITEC members of staff and the SMEs staff. So it's always blended teams between both organizations. So the guideline that we are following is for every X amount of effort that ITEC invests in an SME for a specific SME Accelerator project, we expect SME to put in at least the same level of efforts from their side, if not more. And that has been quite successful until now. We have the SME Accelerator projects ongoing since May this year. It took a while for us to ramp up and build the framework around which to implement the SME Accelerator program since September last year. But since May this year, the projects have been going very well. So the approach is naturally co-design and performance optimization, which is the focus of the ITEC or the National Competence Center efforts. While naturally we cannot engage in development of production or operational code, our focus is on co-design and architecting the systems for performance or scale, and also engaging in POC or demonstrator building in that exercise. And all of this is focused on, at the end of the day, enabling the SME to develop the skills or awareness in these kind of areas, the knowledge transfer, because at the end of the SME Accelerator, we expect the SME to have a bit more knowledge internally within their team based on what they have learned in this exercise. And Access to HPC platforms is also a part of this program. It pretty much depends on a case-by-case basis whether the SME needs access to external platforms outside their organization. In some cases, we end up working with their own in-house infrastructure, but we always provide the option to use the national systems, the European systems, or even commercial cloud systems, depending on preferences or requirements of each case. Each SME engagement within the current 2-year program is structured around 6-month stints with the SMEs. Over a 6-month period with an SME, ITEC invests 3 person months, which is roughly half a person's time. It's usually a blended team from ITEC. So similarly, we have at least 3 PMs worth of effort invested by the SME. So it's usually at least 1 FTE working in each SME acceleration project. And then this is where the environmental sciences and climate informatics expertise from ITEC helps, because it's not just the digital transformation, but in many cases, our focus is on the green transition of the SMEs, their products, their workflow as well. So whether it be leveraging climate data sets, whether it be leveraging the carbon footprint of a process or a solution. So with the advantage of having expertise in the environmental and climate domain, we're able to look towards digital as well as green transition of an SME through the SME Accelerator. So I'll just present a quick overview of a few of the SME Accelerator projects that are currently ongoing. There are a few more in the pipeline, but we are just doing it on a batch level at the moment to ensure quality. So the first one is with a company called Telegnostics Limited. This company works in the agricultural sector, particularly focusing on detecting and testing parasitic infections in animal fecal excretions. So what they have is they collect images of animals as excretion, particularly in cows, and those images are basically analyzed using machine learning aided solutions, image analysis through deep learning, for identifying parasites in the fecal samples. So this is an engagement that started between ITEC and Telegnostics prior to the SME Accelerator. In the previous engagement, we built the models with them through state-funded instruments for the deep learning solutions. In the SME Accelerator, what we are doing is taking forward using the methods that Telegnostics have built to improve, 1, the accuracy of the models, 2, scaling up the models in terms of their performance, in terms of training and inference, because eventually one of the areas of investigation is to deploy these models on the edge on devices where they can be used for inference on the field. But then there is an element of performance engineering always involved there. So assisting the SME, Telegnostics in this case, for improving their machine learning models' accuracy to address multimodal or additional characterizations of the fecal eggs, and improving at the same time the performance of these models is the input from ITEC to the SME. And this basically benefits them in timely delivery or development of their product, and then a cost-effective deployment model, whether they want to use an in-house infrastructure or move to the cloud. So advise them on the level of what kind of deployment model would work. Those are the kind of conversations that SMEs usually have as well. So accurate diagnosis, timely development, and cost-effective deployment solutions is the benefit for the SME in this case. Similar to Telegnostics, but in a different domain, is fathomtech. So this company is focused broadly on building digital solutions, but in this case, we have again worked with Fathom previously through a different European funding instrument. And the focus is on using remote sensing satellite data sets for identifying and predicting biomass that is available in seaweeds in the Irish coastal regions. So seaweed is a huge industry in Ireland, particularly for biomass and energy. And monitoring the growth of seaweed and their biomass gives a trajectory then of how much energy, so to say, is going to be available. Bioenergy is going to be available. So Fathom basically focuses on using remote sensing data sets, remote sensing satellite data sets to build deep learning neural network aided models to create a map of the existing biomass and monitoring them. And previously in the engagement, we co-developed the models with them, but in the SME Accelerator engagement going forward, we're doing similarly, scaling up accuracy, improving the accuracy of the models, scaling up and operationalization of their deployment pipeline. So Previously, the models just existed standalone, but now we are assisting fathomtech to kind of do the entire pipeline, design the entire pipeline of data collection to data preparation, hosting, to optimizing the models and deploying them on AWS. In this case, that is their preferred choice of platform, and operationalizing them with the desired SLA requirements. So it's assisting them with the DevOps, the machine learning, the data management, and then the performance optimization end to end. That's the advice or support that ITEC provides to Fathom in this case. Complementing them are kind of evercam. So evercam is a company that works on providing image analysis solutions to the construction industry. So construction industries monitor their sites with live or recordings of the building construction. They have videos, large video data sets. And evercam provides the digital platforms or solutions to analyze these data sets and identify different kind of events, logistics tracking, safety tracking, etc. So their platform addresses multiple use cases using the construction videos. And primarily evercam, this is an example where they have in-house expertise to build the workflows themselves. So they have machine learning engineers, they have analytics people who can work with computer vision image data sets. But then where they are currently, prior to the SME accelerator, is that they have been doing these neural network-based analysis and analytics of the data sets on a workstation in-house on a single GPU. But then they naturally ran into limitations on how large data sets they can process, batch sizes of their training that they can address in deep learning training, scaling to multiple GPUs. That was not something that they knew. So we are basically working with them on primarily the scaling and performance optimization of their model training inference, but also then scaling in terms of their training to distributed deep learning training on multi-GPU, multi-node environments. So this would allow them to then use their 200 years worth of, so it's not 200 years in terms of time, but the length of the videos to use them more efficiently for their training of their models, and also scale their software solutions that they are already offering to large compute environments. So that's primarily, so it's a more traditional performance optimization and deep learning at scale. That is the focus of this engagement with evercam. Ubotika, so I have just Ubotika and Merida's two more use cases. So Ubotika is a company that specializes again in computer vision, but now in the context of processing these vision data sets, image data sets at the edge. So quite literally at the edge, in this case, we have been working with Ubotika for a good few years now through ESA-related projects. And one of them was, it just recently finished earlier this year. So the SME Accelerator engagement is kind of a follow-on, but continuity support for Ubotika going forward. The previous engagement focused on developing a workflow and a model that allows us to upload deep learning neural network models on board satellites. And the inference on the remote sensing data is done on board these satellites in raw data. And then the analytics or the metadata of that inference is what is downlinked to the ground stations. So the previous project, we developed a platform with them to be able to upload the neural network models and update the weights as well while in orbit based on new training that's done. And also we work with them to optimize the machine learning models for the edge device, which was in that case the Merida 2. Now, going forward, what we want to do is, since they have a prototype of this workflow, they want to do two things. One is to enhance the models to be able to support multiple use cases. So we work with a very specific fire detection use case for fire detection, but then naturally moving on to other use cases needs updating the models to be multimodal models to work with different data sets, combinations of data sets, etc. And also the performance optimization of these models on the small form factor device at the edge. So the operationalization of these deep learning inference models while in orbit with a higher TRL or a higher production level is what Ubotika is working on. And we provide the support then in case of working with the models on the Myriad infrastructure, the Myriad architectures, and even FPGAs as target. So it's the expertise of infrastructure and optimizing the neural network models on these target architectures. That is the benefit for Ubotika in this case. And finally, Merida is a pharmaceutical company which works in using AI or deep learning models to be specific for peptide analysis. Peptides are protein fragments that are used to build drugs or medicines, and Merida focuses on analyzing peptides from natural resources that can be used for medicinal purposes. So they already run their neural network training on the CSCS system, so they know how to scale their deep learning models on larger HPC clusters. So that is not something that we are working with them. In this case, it is more on looking at quantum computing as a potential programming or a compute paradigm for peptide analysis, either from a chemistry perspective or from a natural language processing perspective, because Merida specializes in using pattern matching in NLP in a classical sense for analyzing peptides. So we work, ITEC has worked on quantum natural language processing, but also quantum chemistry. So with Merida, we are exploring whether quantum chemistry modeling, simulation, and or quantum natural language processing is suitable for peptide analysis. If yes, at what level of capacity, what are the limitations currently of the quantum computing platforms that are currently available, and what scale of problems can be addressed at this stage. So early pursuit of this technology kind of presents an advantage or a foresight to Merida's on how quantum computing and hybrid quantum computing is suitable for the problem that they work with. And it kind of future-proofs them to a certain extent. So just through all of this experience, what we have learned is the SME accelerator, whose purpose is to provide expert support in HPC, AI, and data analytics, focusing on knowledge transfer with the purpose of twin transition, also allows the SMEs increasingly to gain visibility. Not all of them are aware of something like FF4EuroHPC or other European instruments that kind of are out there to support. So the SME accelerator, we have learned, provides significant visibility both ways for the SMEs to learn more about European instruments that can support them. Vice versa, the SMEs also gain familiarity, also become visible to the European audience. And so that results in their awareness or adoption of these technologies, their skills development, and it provides access to platform. I believe I have run out of time, sorry about that, but the last note is on the digital innovation hubs and the upcoming European digital innovation hubs, where we believe that the focus of the SME accelerator strongly complements the services that are targeted within the European digital innovation hubs. So we do work with national European digital innovation hubs already to combine efforts. And going forward, we are working on a model which would allow the SME accelerator and the European digital innovation hubs to work together. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Venkatesh. So as usual, if the audience has any questions, so now's the time to either type them in or ask them. So I noticed that that ITEC is really doing some really exciting things, like, for instance, well, hybrid HPC and quantum computing. That's definitely something to watch. I have, well, from your specific examples of SME use cases, so it appears that the majority is about AI, deep learning, and then probably training, right? Or is this just a wrong impression?
At the moment, most of our a significant part of the engagement is on scaling these solutions, machine learning and deep learning solutions on different form factor devices. So the workloads are more machine learning driven. That's true. But then the platform is what is different for each of them. Some of them are at scale, some of them on edge devices.
I see. Okay. And if you say scaling, then so scaling to a little bit more traditional HPC setups, would you scale up training instances so that you really have distributed training on a single batch, a single instance? Or are you well, using many nodes as a farm to just run many batches at the same time?
For evercam, for example, it's a single training batch instance that has to be scaled on a multi-node environment, for example.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. So last call.
Training. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's very interesting. So yeah, if you don't have any questions, then well, we continue with Dr. Andreas Virza, a company called Psychos BW. Actually, it's in the circle of HLS Stuttgart. Let me put it that way. And he will tell us, as you see, about HPC and smart data for SMEs.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I hope you can hear me well. First, we are called ZCOS. It comes from simulation and computing and storage, and it seems to be too close to Psychos, so ZCOS sounds much better. Yeah, I would like to tell you a little bit about what we have done in a somewhat different way. Just have to, well, first, a few words about who we are. So, as Mr. Hoppe already said, we are in the HLRS framework or environment. Actually, we have two shareholders. We have one shareholder is the University of Stuttgart, and the other shareholder is the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology, the former University of Karlsruhe. And the relevant parts there are actually the HLRS, the computing center, the high performance computing center in Stuttgart, and the Steinbruch Center for Computing, computing center of KIT. And we also have a kind of, how do you say, task distribution. All the HPC stuff, or let's say the emphasis on HPC is with HLRS. And when we are talking about data analytics, smart data, it's more on the KIT side, although both universities, of course, cover both topics. Behind those two and supporting us with also financial means is our local Ministry for Science, in our state of Baden-Württemberg. And besides ZCOS, there's another company, a public-private partnership, High Performance Computing for Science and Industry, where Porsche and T-Systems are private shareholders, and the two universities and the state are the public shareholders. There we are focusing, let's say, on providing compute resources to big industry. For example, Porsche is doing a lot of its computing via HWW. And by the way, I'm also managing director of HWW. And on the other side, we have founded a series of solution centers, of HPC-oriented solution centers, and there's also a smart data solution center where industry and academia are working together in a, let's say, association-like environment. And there are different topics like automotive or energy. I'll come back to that later. So, and our main focus is, well, to facilitate SME access to HPC systems and large-scale data facilities. So nowadays you say data analytics, you can say AI. So those are the two main topics. So my goal is to make it as easy as possible for SMEs to really get going on these systems. But we don't stop there. We are also trying to support the SMEs in finding the right competence partners. In many cases, somebody from the university from the HPC centers is the right competence partners. But in many cases, especially with smaller companies, and in fact, its advantages, there are already services out there in the commercial area. And that's actually the best solution when they can have a provider, for example, with whom they work together very closely, efficiently, because, well, although we provide professional services, in our heart, we are still academic research centers. So there's a good transition at this point. And on the other side, you may ask why the ministry funds this, doing the university something for industry. There's also a backflow of information, of knowledge, and also the optimization of their offering. towards industry helps them also to improve their services for the academia, because if you're, well, in order to support companies in general, for example, you have to have proper security regulations, and measures. So this is an extremely important part, and the researchers, of course, also benefit from this operation, help desk, etc. So just right now, we are, for example, going through TISAX certification, which is necessary if you want to work in this field, computing, for example, with the automotive industry. This is definitely very rare in the academia, in the academic environment. So what I would like now to guide you through is what are the challenges that we meet when we try to make SMEs happy with HPC and data analytics. So the first challenge is find the SMEs at all, because if you open up an HPC center and the website and say we can help you, nobody will come. So you really have to be pretty active. I just have a few examples. So what we do, public relations, we have we try to be in magazines, in newspapers, wherever possible. It's definitely easier if it's something, let's say, that's technology oriented or right now industry oriented. Sometimes we are also happy, glad enough to have an article in one of the great newspapers. So the Frankfurter National German newspaper. I think this was 8 years ago. It's really kind of once in a lifetime. But again, this helps to spread the news that we are there. There are also local publications like from the Stuttgart region. There's a local magazine that's distributed strongly, which goes to all companies actually in the region. This also helps a lot. You see there's the AutoCAD and Inventor magazine, where it's more, let's say, technology and software oriented. So we are trying to cover a pretty wide area, so that in an ideal case, somebody notices he finds our name here, and then in another newspaper, and then that's even in the third one. So he says, okay, this sounds interesting, probably I give them a call. What's also extremely important is to build a regional network, and that's something that usually takes quite a while, unless you are already, let's say, when you start, already networked pretty good, which was luckily the case when I joined. So on the left, for example, you see all the chambers of commerce, at least in our surrounding. In the state, there are some more, but we then concentrate on those that are the most interested in the offerings of our shareholders, the computing centers, HLRS and SCC. But there are also a lot of other associations with different topics. Probably not each of them immediately you'll understand why. But let's say, for example, if it's about e-mobility, there's a lot of computing necessary, and even it's about battery cooling or stuff like that. Or if I go to the VDMA, that's the Machinery Association, a very strong one in our area. They have, I think, in our state, more than 1,000 members that are active in the machinery area, and it's a very, let's say, high level association. So usually you talk to heads of departments of development of technology. This is definitely a very, if you are there and convincing, it's a very short way to find the right people. But there are also others who are regionally oriented, economic support in the northern Black Forest or in the southern Black Forest, or there are technology, or how do you say, industry area, industry sector associations like the Animation Media Cluster, which is about media, film and media. BioRadio, it's about bioscience, BioPro, for example, as well. And this takes quite some effort. This is also, let's say, a network that is not growing that much anymore, because it's not enough to have the logo on the screen, but you really also have to work with them. There are also various intensities. So with some we do a lot, and with others only once in a while. But it's important that they know you and know to find you, because sometimes some of their members comes up with the idea, well, HPC might help. And then they give us a call and establish the link. So this cannot be overestimated. This is really an important part of our, let's say, outreach. We also do events of various kinds. So there are user meetings like the Alice Steiner user forum, or we've been with NSYS. Again, we have a kind of regulars table where we every few weeks meet. There's a CAE one. In the meantime, there's also a data analytics one. We perform strategy workshops with our partners where it's usually not about HPC, but simulation and HPC can be a part of their portfolio. We work with the chambers of commerce, which is pretty interesting because they have actually all companies in the area in their address book. Of course, we don't get their address book, but when we do events with them together, they can invite and reach many more companies than we can do. And we also once in a while go to larger events, at least if they are possible, like the Hanover Fair, although this is, well, this is actually more than a networking thing. We rarely find new users for HPC there. It's more about visibility, what we are doing there. So then the second challenge, once you found them, you have to convince them that HPC is something that's really good. And so those are just a few slides out of a presentation where we try to explain them how can they use the supercomputer. And the first question is, what is a supercomputer? Depending on whom you ask. And of course, if you ask at HLRS, you will get HAWK, one of the largest computers worldwide that's easily available for industrial users. There's all, it's a little bit critical because if you talk to SMEs about, I don't know, 40 million euro computer, easily the impression is created that well, this is something that's for Daimler and for the big ones, but for me it's much too expensive. Also, if you look at the nodes and the technology that's behind it, it's of course very impressive and impressing, but you have to be careful to not well, shy them away. So what I try to do to make the computer smaller in a way is to argue that this is actually a computer that's really usable for you as an SME, and even more important, it's affordable. Especially you only have to pay it when you use it. So it's not about just booking something and then you have to pay all the time. It's very controllable. So this is more about control about the spending. And then we have a price list for our industrial users. So you don't need to read all this. I put it together for you a little bit. And the most important figures are those on the right side. This is actually the euro per node hour. In case of HAWK, this is 128 cores. Actually, Hazelhen before this was even nicer because it was less than €1. Of course, it was slower than it's today. And this is something where if I ask them what they guess that it costs, it's something like €100 or even more. And when I tell them, okay, it's €1.38. They can't even believe that at first hand. So this is really an important issue to make clear to them. This is something that you can really use. And I don't know how it's in other computing centers. It's always often handled in, let's say, in a research context. Those are actually those are commercial prices. So there's no research involved. If any of you would like to do some computing tomorrow, well, probably not tomorrow, but next week on HAWK, you sign the contract, you get access, and that's the rate you have to pay. And that's something that the SMEs very much appreciate because that's what they are most afraid of. That it's much too expensive and that they cannot afford it. And of course, it's also a little bit complicated, but we'll talk about that later. So this usually works. So it's no excuse to say, well, that's much too expensive for me. So after such a presentations, you see people are really thinking about what they could really do there. So then the next challenge, the third challenge, actually, so that you know, I have 5 in total. Make it easy for them because their business is not using HPC systems or data analytics systems. Their job is, well, I don't know, to develop a new product or actually to sell something, to sell a service. So the more complicated it is to get onto the systems and use them, the less likely it is that they have to that they will actually do this. So what the message behind this slide is that we support them in every aspect of the usage. So let's say we can provide the applications because that's a critical issue. Licensing, the university in Stuttgart, HLS has only academic licenses that cannot be used by industry, so they have to bring their own license. But we help them at least. There are already many commercial applications running. The academic version, the license is installed, so if they bring their commercial one, it runs just like that. But you have to guide them through that. Also, the visualization aspect, for example, get used to the hardware. What about the infrastructure, the networking? How can I get onto the system? Something where it's a little bit difficult for us to help is when it's about network connections. So this is mostly on the side of the company, but even there we try to help the politics to understand what the needs are. And you won't believe it, it's not too long ago, a few years, that it was very difficult to get more than 16 megabit connection inside Stuttgart. And at least it was not just like that. The project was over before 6 months later, they would have had the connection. So those are things where we also support. We do some kind of, let's say, how do you say, low level consulting. We don't get into the details, or it's more like a high level consulting. But we try to help them, and if we notice an issue where we can't help, we try to find the proper partner. And also things like funding projects. Guy will talk later about Fortissimo for EuroHPC. Those are things where when we see that this could be a match, we are definitely there to help them to get a decent proposal. So we don't write those proposals. That's something we cannot do. They have to write them themselves. But of course, we give them feedback and check with them and make sure that they go into the right direction, because in many cases, they are simply not used to that. And with a few explanations, a good project then also really has a chance of being funded. And now I've mentioned already these solution centers. Actually, the Energy Solution Center is with Karlsruhe. In Karlsruhe, it's about energy-related issues. More interesting there and closer related to Stuttgart is the Automotive Solution Center for Simulation. It started actually as Automotive Simulation Center Stuttgart. But by being international in the meantime, they found out that Stuttgart is probably a little bit limiting when you want to get BMW as a customer. So the focus of these solution centers is to bring together several industry companies in a pre-competitive phase. So that it's about tools. They are not discussing how the next car will look like, but they are discussing about the simulation tools mainly that they will use, and they do this, let's say, in a kind of trusted environment together with the HPC people, but also with university people from institutes that are, for example, automotive oriented. And the idea is to be very application solution oriented, and that's something that industry in general appreciates a lot. And over time, I think ASCS right now has, I think, 35 or 40 members from the industry, even international ones, so it has reached a level where it's in a way self-sustaining. In the beginning, they got some funding from our ministry, but in the meantime, they live on the fees from their members, and sometimes they also join projects and get funding there. And we also have a smart data solution center, BW. This is a little bit different because it's technology oriented, while the energy and the automotive center are industry sector oriented. Here was the idea, this is also more like a project that's still funded by the ministry, to get companies look closer at this technology, and once they have learned it, they should be able to go their own way. So together with the KIT people, we have set up 3 pillars. There's a smart data platform, which in fact is a hardware and software environment. So in the background, there are companies like IBM that bring in Watson technology, for example. We have SAP with HANA, also including reasonable computers for that, so that the scientists also can have, let's say, a variety of tools to choose from when it comes to looking at problems from their industrial users. And the big emphasis is on the processes and tools, especially for SMEs. Here, a lot of open source tools are used, which well, they like usually a lot because it's a cost issue for them. And there's a consulting and coordination pillar where we also try to have, let's say, look out for potential projects, funded projects, or help them, actually consult them to get going on their own. And so there are some for SMEs, some topics like big data does not necessarily mean huge amounts of data. They again afraid that they only have, I don't know, 100 of gigabytes, so they think that's too small. And I can tell them, well, we had a very interesting data analytics topic with about 6 gigabytes of data, but it was from 10 years stock actions in a logistics company. And there was a lot to learn from there. So again, it's setting the expectations right. And we want to help them to analyze new complex topics quickly by, well, using the experts, bringing in the experts from KIT, look that it, make sure that it fits into their value chain, that they can integrate it. If necessary, they can also use resources. The ROI actually for SMEs in most cases also has to be pretty short, because they usually don't have a big buffer of funding. Find the right idea, right partners, and strengthen their competitiveness. So that's what we want to do, them all in a very, let's say, flexible and quick and not well, a little red tape manner. And since a few years, we also have a media solution center. This is probably a more exotic branch, but there had been a museum has been involved in the founding phase. The Film Academy, there's a university for media right across the street from HLRS. We are working together. So we had a 2-year start phase. For where we looked, for example, like an open source based rendering flow that could be run on the HLRS systems or digital media archives or virtual reality stuff. And actually, our biggest success was our first success in this area that at that time, I think it was Hermit still, was used to render images for the Maya the Bee movies, which was a first for us as well as for them. And in the meantime, Mark 13 and Studio 100 Media, I think in the meantime, they have computed the 4th animated film there. And we learn a lot from them, and they have a very flexible partner that gives them more than just a few cores to compute on. And in this context, we also see the Fortissimo projects. I think many of you know them, and Accelerate, we've heard about EuroHPC before. This is something that's very important for us to also exchange experience with others, see what others are doing, bring in our input. It all helps us to make it better. And now coming to the final challenge, well, when we really have them as users, and I just mentioned it, it's not always easy to keep them as users. So we were successful with Mark 13 because they really feel, well, they trust us. And this, in a way, is probably the most difficult challenge, because usually you think then the business is now established and it's running. But you need to, let's say, take care, maintain them. That actually does not mean that they have to be users of the HRS until the end, but they should use the technology. So this is not about, I mentioned that they have to pay for the compute time they use at HRS, but this is not about earning money. Actually, the money is not freely available. It has to be reinvested so that the academic users, which have to share their system with industry users, get more performance. So this is not about earning money, but it's really creating long-term HPC users for their benefit. And I have I think two examples. One is Recom Services. Actually, it's a spin-off company from the university, so they were already closed. They were used to using HPC, but today I think they have 10, 12 employees. They provide simulations for furnaces, for big boilers, industrial coal plants, etc. And they wouldn't be able to afford the computers on their own. And the performance that the computers that HRS deliver are very, very important for them. Nope, that was the wrong direction. Another very nice success story is Optima Pharma. It's a company that produce clean room technology, and they set up these clean rooms for pharmaceutical industry. And with them, we helped them get an open foam based solution established. So the open foam expert at HRS worked with the guy at Optima Pharma, and together they set up. And again, this is something where both parties benefit, because the HRS guy also knows much more about the needs that an industrial user has when it comes to open foam. And what comes in handy here is that they also use the 3D virtual reality environment to impress some, or well, not only to impress, to show the results, but it usually impresses again their customers. So it's really a win-win-win situation. So we have various customers, and they are, in the meantime, there are much more. There are small ones, there are large ones, and they all, it's not that everybody uses it all the time. Like Mark 13, they only come, of course, when they have a project where they need it. But you see, it's a healthy mix of small and large and different industrial sectors. So to sum up, the key success factors we actually see are aim for short-time financial viability. That's extremely important for SMEs. They must have the feeling that they can afford it. The risk for them to get going must be in a way limited. So that's why we start usually very, very small and try to convince them so they can go step by step and decide which step to go when. It's also important to be very flexible. This is sometimes a little bit difficult when you have, let's say, the operation department of the computing center. Usually, well, you know, the computer runs best if there are no users on it. But here you have to be, in many cases, very flexible. This is a challenge for both sides, but it's very important. And I mentioned ease of use. This is also extremely important. And the support we give, well, excellent in a way. The quality needs to be good, of course, but we also have to react quickly, because usually they have some business pressure in the background. And you have to understand that it's different than with most academic users. Usually, if a customer on the other side is waiting, it's really it can be existential for the company. And it all comes up actually to develop really a good level of trust with them. If they trust you, then things are getting actually much easier for both sides. But this trust has to be earned. It just doesn't come like that. And that's my talk. And again, I of course think the funding. I think Bastian already showed a much nicer slide with many more participants and project partners. But that's it from my side now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Andreas, for this tour de force. Very interesting. I have one question. So I'll look at the chat. There is a question that probably Guy can answer a little bit later on the Fortissimo open call. So I have a question. You mentioned the topic of licenses. Mm-hmm. So, and of course, an academic HPC center will not have a full range of commercial licenses. That's very clear. You said so users from industry need to bring their own licenses. Does that work with small and medium enterprises? Since licenses are expensive and usually the ISVs are not that willing to give special prices for just short periods of usage.
It is a difficult issue. In many cases, I don't say most, but in many cases we are able to solve that. But in some cases, it's really difficult. It depends a little bit also on the licensing models. So if we are talking, for example, Star CCM Plus, there's the power on demand licenses. It's not really cheap, but it's independent from the number of cores. So that's an ideal case. That works. Well, it's really flawless because they can prepare it. Usually they have a license at home for their workstation, and either they can use that license for 1,000 cores or even more, or they can buy then a power on demand license. So that works pretty well. In other cases, it's really difficult. And of course, also Hawk is a Linux computer, but not everything runs there. So this is definitely a challenge, and in fact, I don't see an easy solution for that. So this is limiting us in general. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so then I think we can go on to the next presentation, which is now specific to a Fortissimo success story. So Dr. Andreas Virza of SpiceTech will present. So Andreas, floor is yours, and we can see your screen. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. So you can see my screen. Perfect. Good morning. My name is Andreas Virza, and today I want to take up on Andreas Virza's presentation, and I want to show our success story as an SME. How we got into HPC computing in the frame of Fortissimo 2, where we had an experiment together with XLab from Slovenia as HPC experts and the HLRS as the High Performance Computing Center. And just to give you a short overview of our company, SpiceTech itself, it has been founded in 2016. At the moment, we have 12 AI and software experts, and over the time, we had 5 research projects. You can see we're a very research-connected company. And if you look at the company, we want to bring the data in the center, which means we want to focus on data. And then we have one part of the company which is focused on data analysis, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. But on the other hand, we also have the software engineering part, which brings the solutions we develop into a product which we can directly deliver to our customers. And thankfully to the experiment of the FF4 the FF2 experiment, which we took place in, we can also write HPC on our slides now, and this is a very lucky situation for us in this case. So, what was the idea when we started the experiment? I want to just show you this short video, and you can see a Tesla Model 3 and an overturned truck laying on the road, and as you can see, this car crashes into this truck, and this is a situation. If you look at something like this, you always think, why can something like this happen? Why can an autopilot, which was running at that time, why can this autopilot run into such an object? And so let's go to the next slide. So the question is, if we take a piece of cheese, and if we say this piece of cheese is the complexity we have to handle, and we have 3 dimensions of variations where we can variate our scenarios for such an autopilot, for example, then in the end there are many regions where the autopilot really works great and perfect, but there are smaller regions, you can see the holes in the cheese, where we have problems with our artificial intelligence running the autopilot and the detection of objects. And this was the beginning of our product Velocy, and Velocy can be, we divide our customers' AI system into a system which has multi-dimensional inputs. We only have, for the cheese example, we only had 3 dimensions, but if we have real-world scenario for an autopilot, we have, let's say, 50, 60, 70 dimensions we have to take care about. And for our Velocy product, we have thought about how can we find a niche where we can have a virtual validation solution which connects perfectly to the need, for example, of an OEM who already has a testing and virtual model, a testing system and a virtual model, but he does not know exactly where to find these holes in the cheese. And we use an own AI, we use the scalable HPC resources and an evolutionary model to just detect these holes in an efficient way, which means we don't have to go through all these dimensions and calculate all of them, but we can just run a smaller amount of it and have a very good knowledge about where the AI detects things good or not so good. So how does Velocy work? If we have an example here, we see this is a street, and on the right image you see this is how, for example, the autopilot wants to see the street after it has recognized what is on the street, where is the road going to. But in real world, we have, for example, we have fog as one dimension, and the fog turns into something where we have not that clear contrast between the lines on the road and the fog itself, which is on the depiction. So what we will do, we will ask our customers to give us the dimensions they want to change. They have their own simulation and their own model, but they give us these dimensions, and in the beginning we go there and give them a set of dimensions that we look over all possible places in this big dimension scenario field, that we have a starting point where we make our calculations. And then our customers can run these simulations, for example, on HPC. And in the end, we get out multidimensional output parameters, which we are monitoring with our Velocy system, and then we decide on the result. If it failed or if it was a successful result, we decide and give the simulation new input parameters to do this calculation. And as you can see, this is very perfect for an HPC cluster, because the parallelization is really perfect, because it's just we run one simulation on one node, for example, and so we can have extremely good scalability on an HPC cluster with our approach. So if you look at the right, we see a depiction of a street which we did with the FKFS in Stuttgart together. You have different failures which go into your depiction. For example, you have red channel, green channel, blue channel failures, but also you have sharpness failures when your lens system is not working properly, or pixel errors, or you have the environmental things. And this is something we all took into account. And if we have these variations, HPC is the perfect solution for us to make something like this available for our customers. And if you look at Velocy, we have 3 pilot customers at the moment. We're doing calculations at the moment on smaller scale, but in the 4th quarter of 2021, we want to have an official release of our Velocy as a product. And then we come back to the HPC center in Stuttgart, and we want to do calculations there with our Velocy system. And we have good connections to these 3 pilot customers. They all want to have Velocy, but I think we have a solution which is independent on the real use case, so we can use any AI-based system and make virtual testing of any AI-based system with our Velocy approach. Yeah, I have to thank now Xlab as a cooperation partner, and the HPC experts and the guys also from HLRS, especially Bastian Koller, for the perfect support when we wanted to start with our HPC first experience in 2016. And I have to say, from my company's point of view and from my personal point of view, this was a really great success. And I hope that many other SMEs get the chance to do something which is similar to our case in the future on HPC infrastructure. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Andreas. So that was a fascinating presentation, since, well, for me personally, since I've worked a little bit, well, in years gone by, and is on a similar problem with the guys from DFKI. So one question I have, so well, you can modify all kinds of environmental parameters, yes, and also the situations. So recently there has been some discussion on about autonomous driving, deep learning networks, and ways to spoof them by doing seemingly very innocuous things like doing applying some patches to traffic signs. So this kind of malicious modifications, is that something that you and your customers are also worrying about? Or is the assumption that you are just, quote unquote, faced with the billions of variations coming from the environment and coming from the traffic participants?
In the end, we can do it with our Velocy approach, as long as the customer has an own simulation where he can do things like this. And this is the interesting part. We have our Velocy, which is really a black box system. So we put in the simulation part of our customers as a black box, which is very good if you have, for example, an automotive OEM who does not want to share every detail of what he's doing. And so we can take this black box and do whatever, because we just give in the variations of the dimensions where we want to have new calculations. Then this black box does the calculation, and in the end it gives us a result where it says it was good or it was not so good, and we use this to give a new data set of input to them, which means in the end we can do nearly everything with as long as our customers have their own simulation of it, and in this case they are working on things like that, on these malicious stickers on science, for example.
Okay, thank you. So any questions for Andreas? If not, we can go on to the last presentation, actually 2 minutes early. So this is Dr. Guy Lonsdale about, well, basically the Fortissimo for Open Call 2 that is now open. So telling you how SMEs can benefit from Fortissimo 4 and from HPC. So Guy, the floor is yours.
Okay, so I'll just go into full screen mode. Yeah. Okay,
Perfect.
so welcome everybody. Thank you to all the previous presenters, and particularly what we just heard was somebody saying, well, they hope that other SMEs will have the chance to benefit from the use of HPC. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about, the possibility to participate in the second FF4EuroHPC open call. So what I'll do is I'll give you a couple of reminders and background from the Fortissimo approach. You've heard about it already. Explain briefly what happened in Call 1 and the selected experiments we have. But the main part will be talking about the second Fortissimo open call, FF4EuroHPC open call. I'll explain some changes with respect to Call 1, and then try and give you as much information as possible about expectations and objectives and how you can submit a proposal. And I hope we then have some time for a Q&A. So the Fortissimo approach you've heard about, the central theme is executing experiments, and you've heard about some experiences of them. As you also heard, these are not research experiments. We're not looking for research labs to do blue sky research. We're looking for experiments that address business challenges. So we're looking to show real business impact for SMEs through the use of HPC. And the bulk of the funding that we have in the Fortissimo projects goes to these experiments. And they are now in the current project exclusively generated through open course proposals. And in the past, you've heard about some of them, but the Fortissimo and Fortissimo 2 projects performed over 90 experiments and generated almost 80 really impressive business-oriented success stories. And you can find those in the brochure that's shown there. That is actually the main purpose. Although we want to support the SMEs that participate and we want them to succeed, the motivation with the project as a whole is to promote the use of HPC in Europe amongst all SMEs. So it's actually all about creating success stories and telling people this is what the impact can be of using HPC. We have some of you will be thinking about how to put together proposals and how they should be structured, and this is a slide from one of the past experiences. Some lessons learned from the past. The best experiments, the ones that were really successful, it was clearly the case that they properly planned their work from the start. The projects, the experiments will have a fixed time frame, a fixed budget, so it's important to actually pick an achievable project. Not too small, not too large. They need to have access to all the software required or understand how it's going to be developed. So know in advance what the targets are with the software and make sure you've got access to it. And really think about the business case from the outset. What are the business benefits you expect to have in a 3 to 5 year time frame or beyond? And of course, the experiment that you'll do will be producing a prototype and doing first experience, but think about how you move to production use from the onset. So you've already heard about FF4EuroHPC. It's funded within the EuroHPC joint undertaking. It started in September and has a 3-year duration. our coordinator you've already heard from, HLRSS, and we have 5 other partners. In total, we have 4 HPC centres. 3 of those are actually allowed to participate in experiments in the open cores with a proviso, but I'll come back to those. So those that are not eligible to participate are ArcTour, Scarpos and TerraTech. All 3 of our organizations are involved in coordinating the open cores, so we're not eligible to participate at all. You've already heard about the purpose for the project. It's really promoting industrial uptake of HPC in Europe, and the focus is on small and medium-sized enterprises. So we continue the Fortissimo approach and executing business-oriented application experiments driven by SME end-user needs. We will also be collaborating with the NCCs, and we see that in the discussions about proposal submission, and also interest in the future results of the experiments. And as you heard from Samir, we'll actually be for the participating SMEs, supporting them in establishing HPC-related innovation, getting the most out of their experiments. So Core 1 happened, and as you already heard, the first set of experiments started their work in June. We were very happy with the results of the core. We had 68 proposals that involved over 200 organizations and participants from 25 countries with a really very wide range of application areas. Of course, we had a limited budget for Core 1, so we couldn't fund all of those. We were only able to select 16 proposals for funding, with a budget just in excess of 3 million. So overall, we had 53 organizations involved, 27 of those being from SMEs. So you see the diagram there with the SME and non-SME split, a very good balance of the selected experiments in terms of the participating SMEs. And a good range of themes addressed. And it's certainly not all about the usual suspects of modeling and simulation. Yes, we have coupled simulation and CFD and molecular dynamics, Monte Carlo, but we also have 3D rendering, video analytics, risk management, natural language processing. So we do have quite a strong participation of the analytics and machine learning applications. And what we speak about in the documentation is advanced HPC services, and that really does mean the range from modeling, simulation, analytics, and the links to IoT and other. So a very broad view of what we consider advanced HPC. So that was a bit of a background and repeating some of the things you've already heard. But now I want to talk specifically about the Open Core 2. And first, to explain, answer the question, are there any differences between Core 1 and Core 2? So some of you will have been engaged in Core 1. And in fact, there are some changes. And there have been 2. And they're linked to the selection process. So we will be giving a higher priority to experiments addressing business benefits of manufacturing SMEs. So that's 1 increased priority that I'll explain how we implement that. And we also have a modification of the selection process to make sure we achieve a very broad geographical distribution of participants. And I'll go into details about that later, but the short first answer is yes, there are some differences between cores 1 and 2. But what is really unchanged is the core concept. It's as I've said, the project is all that is about demonstrating to SMEs throughout Europe that they can really benefit from the use of advanced HPC services. And that includes modeling and simulation, analytics, machine learning, and AI, and possibly combinations of all those. And we have indeed seen proposals that do that. And it's all about taking advantage of those ICT solutions for the business benefit of the SME end users. There's been some change to the definition of the objectives. So it's very clear that all experiments should address business challenges from European SMEs. So it's, again, it's not about research experiments. We're looking for a wide set of application domains, but there is a preference given to engineering and manufacturing. But having said that, any sector able to demonstrate fast economic growth or particularly economic impact for Europe. So if it's an industry sector that's important for Europe in an economic sense, then it's applicable for the call. We will be giving highest priority proposals directly addressing the business challenges of manufacturing SMEs, and I'll come back to that in the scoring system. But it should be mentioned that even if a theme's really important for Europe, for example, drug discovery for addressing COVID-19, if the SMEs have a research-focused business models, then they're viewed to be out of scope of the call. So we're looking for the economic and business impacts. We would like to have SMEs that are new to the use of advanced HPC services, so not old hands at HPC, but we're really looking to find SMEs that are new to using advanced HPC. So expectations reach the experiments. The diagram on the right is one that we've been using throughout Fortissimo, and it shows the sort of end user centric view and the combination of small consortia that are necessary to perform experiments. So typically there will be need for software, and this could be from an independent software vendor, an ISV, or a research software provider. And it's likely that the end user needs support from experts. So these could be HPC service providers, or HPC experts, or application experts. And each proposal should involve all the parties necessary to do the work. So necessary to execute the work plan they're going to propose. There is a difference to the prior Fortissimo projects in that the project itself will not be able to provide computing resources. So within your budget, within your proposal, identify the HPC center that you're going to use, or the HPC services, and budget for it. I've mentioned that many of the application experiments are in the area of machine learning or artificial intelligence, and very often then there are some data protection and data access issues that come up there, and it's your job in your proposal to identify which issues might arise and make sure that your work plan is able to be executed to adhere to the requirements that you have. I've already mentioned this, but it's a very important point. We need to get publishable success stories based on solving SMEs' real-world problems. Now, we've said that the experiment should focus on business issues, business challenges. So we realize that some information will be confidential or commercial in confidence, but nevertheless, we want to be able to explain to others what impact it can have. And that may be in terms of economic impact for the company, but we don't want you to disclose any commercial in confidence information. It may be that some of your countries have regional priorities, such as industrial specialization areas, and it will be advantageous in proposals to highlight such links. Most importantly as well is that we're not looking to repeat things that have already been done. So the new proposals should be complement what's been done before in past projects, and obviously those selected in core one. So doing something different, or not repeating things that have been done before or in the same context. So now I'll come to the evaluation criteria. The four base criteria, the ones we've used throughout Fortissimo: impact, including industrial relevance and exploitation; the soundness of the concept you have and the work plan; the quality of the consortium, both as a whole and of the individuals; and effective and justified deployment of resources. So the way this is scored, that each criterion has a score between 0 and 5. Criterion 1 has a double weight, and the remaining criteria 2 to 4 have a weight of 1. So that gives a maximum score of 25 points. There is a threshold applied. A score of 3 is a must for the first 3 criteria. That means if a proposal scores below 3 on any of those first 3 criteria, it's not eligible for funding. Now I come to the change with respect to core 1, prioritization of experiments involving manufacturing SMEs. So the policy we'll be using is that a maximum score on impact on criterion 1 will only be given to manufacturing SMEs, and other areas would have a maximum score of 4 points. So proposals which do not directly address business challenges of manufacturing SMEs will have a maximum score of 4 on impact. That does not mean that it's impossible for funding. If you do the maths, this means that you have a potential maximum score then of 23, which is certainly high enough from past experience to be included in the set of proposals that will be selected. Now I'm going to the process we're going to have for selecting experiments, and this targets the geographical distribution of experiments. The project's funded by EuroHPC. There are a large number of member states, and there's a great interest to make sure that we don't just promote HPC in those countries that are already using it, but really reach out to all countries. So it's very important to have this geographic distribution. In Core 1, we selected proposals involving organizations from the 9 countries listed there. And we're going to, in a sense, prioritize other countries, but it does not exclude in any way proposals from involving organizations from those countries. So there will be 2-phase selection process. In the phase 1, experiments selected with a cumulative funding up to 3 million euros. And this selection will be done from those proposals with a score exceeding 17 points, and taking for each country not in the list of those 9 countries there, the highest ranked proposal involving an organization from that country. And then in phase 2, we will still have at least 2 million euros funding remaining, and from those 2 million euros, we will fund, we'll select the next set of experiments from all proposals, irrespective of the country affiliations. So just to make that a bit clearer, here's a diagram. So the evaluation process is done using independent experts. They will evaluate the proposals without taking account of geographic distribution, and that provides a rating for each of a score for each of the proposals. As I mentioned, proposals which are evaluated below threshold on the first 3 categories are not eligible for funding, so they're taken out of the list. And then for phase 1, for all the proposals above threshold, we take the best proposal from each phase 1 country, from those with score above 17 points, and then that will give us a set of experiments using a sum which is a maximum 3 million euros. And then all the above threshold proposals not selected in phase 1 will be assessed or included in their ranking, and from them we will take the best next set of proposals with the remaining budget. So the phase 2 selections will actually allocate a budget of 5 minus X million euros. I've been talking about funding. What does that mean in detail? How are we providing funding to experiment partners? We're using the term third parties. So actually all organizations involved in selected experiments are considered as third parties, and we're using the European Commission's funding mechanism for financial support for third parties. The funding of third parties will follow the same principles as for the project beneficiaries, the 6 organizations I mentioned earlier, and they receive funding through the JU, but using Horizon 2020 rules. So this means in particular that third parties will receive 100% funding of the eligible costs arising, and I'll come back to that again. But there are some boundary conditions, and these are imposed on us by the European Commission, and we have to be very strict about these. So the funding for an individual experiment may not exceed 200,000 for all participants. The maximum funding that we are allowed to give to any third party organization across all the experiments in which it might be involved is 150,000 euros. I mentioned earlier that 3 organizations from the 3 beneficiaries, HLRS, CESCA and Cinica, are allowed to participate in experiments, but they are not allowed to receive funding. So their costs for those for their participation should be reported, including the proposal, but the requested funding is 0. If it's clear from the onset when we get a proposal that those financial boundary conditions have not been adhered to, we will actually reject the proposal without evaluation. So please look at it very carefully and make sure that your proposals fit the financial boundary conditions. What will be funded? This is actually taken directly from the Word document that you use to write and submit proposals. It shows you the type of funding. What is it we're paying for? So there's a breakdown in terms of personnel costs, other direct costs, possibly subcontracting, and then there is the indirect cost calculation based on standard H2020 rules, and those are 25% of direct costs and other direct costs. As you can see in this example that was made up by me, it's absolutely fictitious. We have here in this case the inclusion of FF4EuroHPC partner. Their costs are reported, but the requested funding is 0. We are often asked, is subcontracting valid? It's not given here in the example because it's typically not really so consistent with having the right partners in the consortium, but it is possible. But in any case, you need to be very clearly explaining why you need that subcontract and what it's for. The same is true for other direct costs. The other direct costs include computing costs, and they need to be clearly explained. So you really should be explaining the amount of core hours that you would need and why it fits into the work necessary for the proposed experiment. So substantiate why you need the costs. And as I already mentioned, the 25% indirect costs are automatically included in the funding mechanism. Coming now then to the key core details. The submission deadline is 29th of September, 1700 Brussels local time. The overall indicative total budget is 5 million, and I explained that the selection phase would split that into 3 million and 2 million. The expected duration of experiments is 15 months, and we hope to get the evaluation through in time for the experiments to actually start in March 2022. I already mentioned the 200,000 limit on experiments. The proposal submission is exclusively in electronic form. You submit PDFs via the website, and there's a submission page sitting behind that, and the language is English. And you'll see a few more times the links for the submission. But if you go onto the FF4EuroHPC website, you should pretty easily find the area for open calls and submission. The proposals themselves have 2 parts. The first part is administrative, and then the body of the proposal, the real text and the explanation of what you want to do, is in part B. We have some limits there. For part A, just just complete the tables, but please don't add in additional information. The part B, we have a page limit, so it's strictly adhered to, a cover page plus maximum 10 pages. Our policy is not to accept any proposals that don't stick to that. There's a lot of information on the website explaining the evaluation criteria and the documentation. Everything I've just said, in fact, is explained in the documentation on the website. That documentation includes a combined call announcement and proposers guide with all the details. Then Word documents that you should use for preparing a proposal. Then there's online information with in addition to an FAQ, there's also a proposer evaluator checklist. So we provide that to our evaluators and tell them the questions they should be asking when they evaluate your proposals. So you can see the same questions. We're very transparent about that. You will be able to see what we're asking our evaluators to look for. So that should help you in providing the right information in the right form. If you have more questions, and I haven't answered them today, then there is actually, as I just mentioned, an online FAQ. There's a lot more information about the past projects, about success stories, and a lot of material that really should help you get inspired to say, hey, this is really quite an exciting thing to be getting involved with. Let's move towards submitting a proposal. But if you still have questions, then there is a web an email address you can use, and somebody from the Scapos team will answer your questions. What we cannot do is actually have a look at your proposal and give you some feedback on your proposal. We won't do that. We stay absolutely independent of that. We will provide generic information about explaining the objectives and the expectations that we have for the experiments, but we won't be able to give you direct feedback on your particular application, on your particular issue. So our feedback to you will need to be in a certain sense general.
Okay, so thank you very much for the presenters, also by the participants. As I said, so the proceedings, so to speak, plus the recording will be available from the Fortissimo 4 website. Thank you very much, and have a nice remainder of your Tuesday.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thanks, Woody. Bye.
Bye.